Hello, and welcome to my individual project for MMC 6400, Interactivity Theory. My name is Ross Schmadebeck, for those of you I haven't had a chance to meet in some of our other classes. And I'll be taking you through this interesting and exciting theory that has a lot of engagement in the digital world. Today I'll take you through some of the historical context around interactivity theory, how it started and where it came about. We'll take a look at its current definition and its goodness overall as a theory. We'll discuss its applications and how it's sort of evolved over the last few decades, with specific attention to some recent engagements by the Coca-Cola Company and how they've really activated interactivity theory. And then we'll discuss the future and evolution and potentially what's on the horizon for this channel, both as a theory and also in its overall application. So what is interactivity theory? It has its roots in what was initially defined as new media, which came about in the early 1970s as we saw a new type of interaction occur beyond the human-to-human interactions or communications we had thus far. Previously, you either had a one-direction communication of a print piece, a radio broadcast, a television show. You might have had some interactivity through initially the telegraph and then eventually the telephone and that back and forth. But we see this new idea of being able to interact with computers and interact with others through computers as we see the work of DARPA and the initial infrastructure of the internet as we know it today coming about. And that evolves into the new media concept in the 1990s as we see the adoption of the internet and more consumers communicating through email. You've got mail from America Online and the ubiquitous, sound effects with it. However, new media isn't entirely the best name for it, and it evolves into what we now refer to as interactivity theory. And we see the first initial research on interactivity and its evolution from new media as it surrounds gaming and those types of interactions with computers, as well as the internet as a whole and how that's continued to evolve through various components there. Social networks, as we've seen in the last decade, have taken that level of interactivity among our interactions with computers and humans to a whole new level, and now the always on, always able to interact through portable devices such as smartphones and tablets. At the whole, though, we have sort of these three main tenets of interactivity theory. And the idea is that there's either a human to computer interaction or a human to human interaction. And at the core, at some point, a message is exchanged between those two. And the interactivity is that message being exchanged. In a human to computer fashion, there's some sort of input to generate an output. And we see that output could generate an additional input. And to human goes beyond even that face-to-face communication, but I put a post on social media, on my Facebook page, and my friend comes and tags into that on my timeline and adds a comment, and we create a whole dialogue where neither one of us is actually talking to one another without that medium being into place. What's exciting about interactivity theory is that because it has continued to evolve and grow, it really has been defined by what we consider to be a good theory. Its openness to those new ways of communicating and engaging, and we'll get to that some in the final few slides. But how it's continued to evolve past the initial human to computer to be human to computer to human, or human to human through video chat and that kind of thing that really brings this theory to life. Its applications today we see initially in the advent of the World Wide Web. Initially, the content used to live on servers like it does today. You'd have a web page of information, and that page would exist. It would be in a file structure. But unless you knew that exact URL or the IP address, you couldn't necessarily access that content. And so from that, you had the invention of hypertext markup language and the idea that you can connect content within other content and connect pages together and create the web. That forms the interactivity that evolves into what we've seen today with gaming and social networks. The initial advent of gaming being I might play a computer program, I might play a friend in a computer program, but now entire gaming networks and virtual realities coming about through that concept of interactivity with other humans and computers simultaneously. Overall, though, we see other theories being applied. Interactivity really finds its value in uses and gratifications. The idea that I'm doing something to generate something in return, I'm transmitting a message to receive a message back, or some type of interaction. That fosters and grows and sees a richness that comes about through not just the context of the message, but the way in which it's communicated. I could say good morning to you in an email message, and that's pretty standard and basic. But if I say that to you in a video message or in a video chat, it has a certain additional richness to it that comes about through not just that real time, but that visual auditory interaction. So today we're going to take a look at two activities specifically by the Coca-Cola Company. I've been very fortunate to work with them in my current organization, and I actually had a chance to chat with them this week, not about these two campaigns, but I will tell you that when we look to what they're doing in the future, their interactivity is absolutely at the forefront and core of what they're doing. But today we'll start at their Share a Coke campaign, which the example I'm going to use is from Australia. It was basically a campaign around a data point that more than 50% of Australians had not tasted a Coca-Cola product in more than a month. And so they wanted to not just move product, but move it in a way that inspired others, and more than half the population, to pick up a bottle of Coke and drink it, and compared to the competition. So they started with a product application, which is very interesting. They introduced 150 custom labels featuring the 150 most popular names in Australia, and printed those on packages. And then those packages were distributed into stores. And for a couple days, it was pretty quiet. What was Coke up to? What were they doing? It eventually involved in them opening up and encouraging everyone to share a Coke with your friend or family, or to take that Coke, buy it, and give it to the friend that you have whose name is on it. They introduced a whole new web interface with it and did pop-up stores, bringing that interactivity to the retail experience, and creating, again, we see uses and gratifications, and the idea that my name, Ross, is not one of the common names in any of the countries, but I can have that name custom printed on a bottle or a can and take that with me, and then snap a picture of it and share it with any other friends named Ross. Through that, though, they eventually created a sweepstakes where, knowing that they hadn't captured everybody's name, they sought an additional 50 names and put it out there as a contest to not just submit names, but to then vote on those names. And they took the top 50 of those and reprinted as a second run of labels names that weren't part of the initial 150. And so you see this growing response to the interaction of the consumer base. It ultimately led to them distributing the campaign globally, and we see it on the store shelves today. The campaign overall went very well for them, and we see the interaction data points here being tremendous for a campaign that only lasted about 6 or 8 weeks. They generated over 12 million earned impressions, and as a marketer, I can tell you that's a staggering number in a short period of time. They created 76,000 digital shares of custom cans, so you could go and type in a name and send that to your friend on Facebook or Twitter, and generated over 300,000 custom cans in those pop-up locations. But what was most incredible was the 870% increase in Facebook interactions to their channel. In this instance, they were able to take what is at a core for their brand, which is maybe hard to activate as an interactivity component. It's a great one-way communication to share out new product, new campaigns, but they created interactions with their fan base, and through custom applications were really able to drive their fans to their brand. The second example I'm going to share with you is their Coca-Cola Freestyle technology. As many of you have potentially seen in any fast food or quick service restaurant or in any gas station, these machines are popping up everywhere. And they started as the idea that, a traditional fountain pour, you had 6, maybe 8 beverages. Through a complex proprietary technology, it's actually really fascinating, you can create over 100 different drink options. And the idea is at any point at any time on one of these machines, assuming it has inventory in it, you can create a beverage that is not even available on store shelves. Personally, my favorite is Mellow Yellow Zero Peach. You can't buy that anywhere, but I know I can walk up to a Freestyle machine and enjoy that beverage. And it has that instant gratification component to it. I touch a few buttons, I interact with the machine in a different way. It has this fancy schnazzy computer interface, and I can create a beverage that's unique to my tastes as to what I'm having. The evolution of this is where we see the next generation of interactivity. So they've introduced a smartphone application that allows consumers to create their own custom beverages, mixing up to 3 different products into the machine. So if I want to take a Fanta Orange with a Diet Cherry Coke and mix it with a Barks Root Beer, I can combine those in up to a third of each different beverage, and then go to a machine, scan it, and it will pour my unique beverage. So not only do I have the opportunity to experiment and play with pouring different beverages on my phone, but I can take that into the real world and see if it's a winner or a dud. What's fascinating in all of this is that even before the smartphone application, is that this is all providing real-time consumer research data. Every one of these machines is attached to the internet and is feeding back usage data and performance and times and pours and refills. And shockingly, or maybe not so shockingly, their top 3 products are Coke, Diet Coke, and Coke Zero. But what's interesting is they can start to see if there are trends in types of behaviors. They can see if one part of the nation is more interested in diet product versus full flavor, or if one part of the country is more prone to the flavored waters versus the carbonated side. So we see all this new data through interaction, not just feeding a better user experience in that moment, but helping to drive a better user experience and communication experience from the company. So what's on the future for interactivity? Well, overall, we see this increase in human-to-human interaction on a global level. The idea that I can now connect with anybody, anywhere, anytime through almost any device. This always-on culture has created interactivity where I can communicate not just as an individual to an individual, but an individual to a mass, and a mass back to an individual. The idea that we can create these, digital user groups that can real-time create Twitter storms or mobilely activate. You have companies like Anonymous, or maybe not companies, but organizations like Anonymous that can rally forces and really sort of bring together individuals on a global level quickly through very, very simple communications like 140 characters on Twitter. We also see human to computer continuing to grow. The idea that I can interact now with a computer in virtual reality and what that experience really looks like. And that's actually why I've chosen sort of this Star Trek theme to my presentation. Is at some point the holodeck is going to become a reality. The idea that I can tangibly interface with an artificial reality that goes beyond sight, sound, but into smell, into taste, into that tactile. And we see that on the forefront now. Oculus has now introduced a accessory that allows you to have that tactical interface with your hands as you interact with your virtual environment. And Microsoft is on the forefront of creating these new virtual reality 3D hologram effects, all using some sort of eyewear device. So as we continue to see that adoption, we continue to see that the potential of communicating both with current and historical figures, as is often the case in Star Trek, whether it's a Mark Twain or a Private Eye, you get the idea that you can create this reality that is very much real in the sense that you're experiencing it, but artificial in where it's located or what makes it up. Which leads me into my question around today's lecture is how does the interactivity of a channel or message impact its richness or its temperature, hot versus cold? Are there any other theories for which interactivity could potentially build upon? And I've addressed some of these with uses and gratifications. I liked the idea of the richness of the media really having greater context to it. But is there any other theories from our program this semester that can apply to interactivity, whether it's present state or its future state? And with that, I thank you for your time. I hope you learned a few things from interactivity theory. I know I enjoyed researching it, and I look forward to hopefully seeing some of your other presentations as well. Thank you so much.